Hey everyone, it's Night Haro here, and today we're going to talk about scribing, specifically for healers. There's a lot of new changes that are coming to ESO with scribing, specifically for healers. Probably the biggest changes for any role whatsoever is probably for healers, potentially also for Endless Archive as well, but it's arguable. So we got a ton of stuff. We got at least one skill that's going to be added to our bar from now on, and yeah, I'm just going to go through a handful of skills, how I would load them out, and then we'll talk about a bit of the, how you could change this, how you could modify it, some other stuff that's interesting for PvP and that kind of thing. With that, we're just going to go ahead and jump into it. I'm going to try to do this fairly quick and keep this short since we are on PTS and all this could change. So first up here is going to be Mender's Bond. So Mender's Bond, we have a lot of choices for this skill. I'm recommending either running as a damage shield or as a healing ability. We have several other options though. We could generate ultimate, but when you read this, it actually doesn't generate ultimate. It transfers it from you to someone else. And I just don't think it's good enough that it's going to be used. So I think we're going with the damage shield or healing morph of this particular ability. Either is fine. There is also damage mitigation down here. And what this does is it transfers 10% of the damage done to the allied player and or companions, anybody in between, you and them, to you. So this could potentially end up transferring a lot of damage to you, and I think too much damage. So I think this could be really useful in PvP, where you're the healer and you're trying to keep someone alive, you're a damage dealer or what have you, where you're pairing off with them. I think this could work really well in that situation, maybe even on a kind of a tank healer. But I think this is going to be very situational in PvE. I do think that there are quite a few situations where you still could use it, though. When I say situational, I still mean a fair number of opportunities to use it. But just keep that in mind. When we compare this to Guard, Guard has a range of 15 meters, and this has a range of 20 meters, so that's really nice. The other thing is we only need to single bar it, and we can cast it and we can bar swap and it still stays on, which is really cool. And you can see the range on it is quite long. So there are a decent amount of situations where you might want to use this skill, no matter what like morph or version of it you use. Again, I just think this is going to stay on our bar pretty much no matter what. Now, we've kind of compared it a bit to Guard to see what it looks like here. So mitigation, you can also use it for restoring resources. So in a non-optimized setting where you're just trying to keep your tank alive, a lot of tanks die because they run out of resources. This is a significant amount of resources for a tank to be getting back and that you can help them with. And so the restore resources is a morph in non-optimized settings I could absolutely see being useful. But that's it for those are the main ones that I'd recommend here. We're going to stick with the damage shield for right now. After that, we have our signature script. So these class masteries, I haven't checked all of these yet, but all the ones I've checked suck. They're not good. Don't use them. So, maybe there's one that I'm missing. Again, I haven't gone through all of them. But yeah, what I recommend is Sage's Remedy here, which we kind of saw whenever our allies move out of the tether, they get a hot that's added to them for a few seconds. So we can kind of see it here. Whenever I move through, this person's not getting healed, they're not getting healed, and then I move out and they'll start getting the heal over time. So kind of an odd ability. It's honestly quite weird if I'm being totally honest. This lasts for 12 seconds, so keep that in mind as well. Not something we can use in every situation, just like we can't use the Necro's Tether in every situation, but there are a lot of situations where I think it could be useful. I'll show you the creme de la creme of this skill we haven't got to yet. Other things you could use this for. I mentioned if we're up here and we're using something like Restore Resources or the mitigation buff of this, we could also use Knight's Valor. So we're assuming in that situation we're putting it on a tank. Knight's Valor increases the amount of damage we can block by 8%, reduces the cost of block by 8%, or rather, I'm sorry, for our allies, not for us. So you could put this on your tank, help keep them alive, especially if they're new, reduce the cost of block if they're having to perma block a lot, as well as giving them resources back. So I think this opens up perma blocking for a lot of roles, for a lot of tanks in a lot of different content. I really think that you are close to perma blocking. I think it's really going to help a lot of people be able to get through content, so that's pretty cool. For PvP, we've got a crazy Crusader's Defiance. Grants immunity to disabling effects for 3 seconds to the ally. I think that's pretty cool. I think that running around with this tether on your ally doing things for them is going to be, it's definitely going to be something that's going to happen. I think the biggest problem with that is that everybody can see the tethers on. So you might be painting yourself with a target, so keep that in mind. There's other stuff like you can snare, and then we also have this shield that you you can do as well. So we have a heal or a shield. Both of those are fine, whichever one you want to do. Neither one of these are huge or amazing, so nothing to necessarily write home about. Perfectly fine to run something like Knight's Favor instead. And this actually could be better in certain situations where you're asking your allies to hold block and block through damage, as long as everybody's relatively stacked. So keep that in mind. And then the creme de la creme, heroism, minor heroism for everyone. So I did check this with someone, and they said this was refreshing every second. So this will stay on them for quite a while. You'll basically have 100% on minor heroism for everybody in your group. Now, most of these skills, whenever they say everybody in the tether, everybody in an area, they actually mean 6 people. So, but that usually doesn't apply to buffs. Buffs will typically hit, it depends. It's ESO, so it's all bespoke. So we'll have to test this some more. I haven't tested it in a full raid group, but right now it looks like heroism is going to be a given. And there's other things here like protection and vitality and other things that we could potentially get, but we have other sources of it that are better. So I think in general, heroism is probably going to be the way to go. There is one exception to that, one skill we can run and setup we can run. So Mender's Bond, this is the orientation I'm recommending it in, and I think generally speaking, even if not in this exact, not this orientation. Again, you could change it up still, but I don't think this is going to be leaving our bar anytime soon. I think it's going to become a staple unless things change drastically. After that, where should we go? Well, there's a couple of spots that are really good. Let's look at Ulfsild's Contingency. This is the Mages Guild skill line. So I recommend here the Healing Morph, and if you look at this, it says that the beneficial signature and affix scripts apply to you and your allies, which are these other 2 abilities we get to choose. That's going to be really important as using this for a buff. If we look at the damage version as well, it also says that it applies to us, but it says or an ally. So it's not everybody in groups. So that's why we're choosing the healing morph of this. And it might be the situation that tanks end up using this damage shield version, but the tanks could also end up using this healing version. So we'll have to see. So this skill is going to be really cool, really spicy, but it could be the situation that a tank runs it instead. So then maybe we don't have to. Other versions, you got damage here. We're not really worried about that. Immobilization, really only going to matter for PvP. So something to consider. Knockback, same deal. Damage, same deal. So I think we're going to go with healing morph of this in most situations. And then we got something crazy, this Gladiator's Tenacity. Reduce damage taken by 8% for 7.2 seconds. 8%, and it's unique, so it stacks on top of everything else. That's crazy. Which is why I think that our tanks are going to be using it a lot. And I think the situation for tanks, if they don't have a good damage shield, they're going to use this. And if they don't, usually tanks that have a damage shield like DKs don't have great heals, so they'll probably be using the healing morph. We'll just have to wait and see. But if so, they might be providing this for the group, this 8% damage reduction, which is crazy, but otherwise we can. Other options here, assuming, you notice that some of these, we lose options whenever we pick something because not everything can be paired together. Again, class mastery is going to be kind of garbage. Whenever you leave a rune on the ground, it applies the affix script in an area. That's going to be very important for us. But if we're running the healing morph, then we don't actually need that, so it kind of depends. Other options here, Sage's Remedy is a bit of a heal over time. It's pretty weak. It looks kind of broken. It looks so weak. And then we can also increase damage and a few other things. So it's a little bit odd. So we're going to go with Gladiator's Tenacity, we're going to go with Healing, and then we're going to go with Minor Protection. So we can actually provide Minor Protection in an AoE for our group as well. So that's a 5% damage reduction. We've got an 8% damage reduction. And there are other places to get Minor Protection, just so you know, for your group. But it's really just Circle of Protection is the main place. So this is one more for the skill that could work out really interesting. And I'm sorry, you know what? I forgot about one thing over here with Mender's Bond that you can do that's kind of crazy. There is actually an option here. This magic damage actually applies damage to attackers when they attack your ally. So this is something where you could put this on your ally, and then whenever they attack this person, they'll take damage, and the damage scales off of what your ally is running, not what you're running, and then you could potentially run something else. So this is another thing that would be kind of interesting for PvP, or could be. We'll have to try it out. We'll have to see what the values end up as, but right now it looks pretty interesting. Okay, moving on. Let's go ahead and take a look. I think Torchbearer, this is going to be a crazy, wild skill. So this is from the Fighters Guild skill line, and all of these cost stamina. Just keep that in mind. So some of the other skills, some things cost magicka, some things cost stamina. This is all all costing stamina. So I think Generate Ultimate is going to be the way to go. This is going to be for really sweaty groups, okay? Really sweaty group content. So this generates Ultimate every time you sweep your torch. You sweep your torch 3 times within the 2 seconds of this channel cast. The fact it is a channel cast could be really hard to run, but I think that's why it's going to be in sweaty groups where you use it whenever you can to help the group generate Ultimate. It might be the case that we need to figure out how to ways of getting more stamina back. So just keep that in mind. Might be running tri-stat potions more often since we don't need any other kind of potions to help increase our stamina recovery. It just kind of is a standard thing. We could also go with other morphs like the healing morph, which will also cause scripts and the affixes and signatures rather to apply to us. Also, the Generate Ultimate also does that. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, the damage and bleed are not going to, or maybe not obviously, but they don't. You could do knockback here. You could do other stuff, but I think really Generate Ultimate or healing is the way to go. And then Gladiator's Tenacity. This is crazy. Reduces our damage taken by 30% for 2.2 seconds. So, when are we going to use this? I don't know, but it does help reduce damage taken for our group. There are certain knee situations, but again, it's kind of weird with the channel only lasting 2.2 seconds. But I think that there are a lot of situations where, it'll help reduce the damage coming in. So as long as we have our HOTS on the ground, we can help generate quite a bit of Ultimate for our group. All the other scripts here, none of them are really, I don't think, significant or anything to write home about, even for pretty much any situation. So we're probably not going to choose any of those. We'll go with Gladiator's Tenacity. We'll make sure we can see all of our affixes first. We have quite a few down here. You can get most of these from somewhere. If we need heroism, this is the skill. If you just want to make this totally ulti generating, you could put heroism on here because you don't need it. And then in that case, with our tether, we could go with something like vitality probably would be the way to go, or some other option, whatever fits our particular needs. But you can kind of see here, resolve, whatever. You're not going to need most of these. So what I would generally recommend is running Generate Ultimate, running Gladiator's Tenacity, and then running Heroism. And this is just a huge ulti generating skill. It does look really expensive at almost 4,000 stamina, but realize this is a 2-second channel. So if you divide, it's only a couple thousand stamina per second, and that's actually not bad at all, to be totally honest. All right, so that's a really interesting skill. Let's go ahead and move on and talk about a couple of others. I think Soul Burst is going to be the way to go. We'll talk about Soul Burst. So I recommend the healing morph of this because it says it applies the affix scripts to us and our allies. We're a healer. We're always thinking about buffing the group. If you look at the damage shield version, it says us or an ally, okay? So it becomes single target. So we want to make sure that we go with the healing version of this focus. Other things here, we have some immobilization, we have some magic damage, physical damage, pull. None of this is anything really to write home about except for this pull. I will note that there are a lot of ways to get pulls in this, and if you're running PvP, everybody can now have a Magicka pull, and so you can yank people out of groups and then focus them down. Whether it's this skill or some other skill, there's a lot that have a pull on it. Probably look at one from your weapon skill line is probably the way to go, but there's a lot of them. So just keep that in mind for PvP. Pretty interesting, but I think for us as a healer, healing is really the only thing that makes sense on this particular skill, so kind of a no-brainer for us. Now that does limit our choices down here. I think this Acolyte's Potency is going to be the way to go. It helps us generate Ultimate, consumes a soul gem. Remember, this works for us and our allies now because we chose the healing morph. So that's a significant amount of ulti gen for the group that is unique. Class mastery, it's lame. This other stuff is just nothing to write home about. Acolyte's Potency is really the way to go. This skill kind of has a straightforward selection for us. And then Minor Courage. We can provide Minor Courage for our group. We don't need an Arcanist doing it now. That's a great choice. We have a couple of others. I don't really think any of these are anything to write home about. I think this is the healing burst. I think this is really the morph and the version to go with of this skill. All right, and those are the 4 main skills that I think are really interesting and will be the most used. We'll talk about 2 more. We'll talk about Wield Soul and we'll talk about Trample. So Wield Soul here, this is a single target ability, and I think basically what it allows us to do either do a really big heal or to do a really big shield on us or an ally. So only one target, and then we could also give them vitality. I don't know why you would use this over like Healing Ward. I think Healing Ward is better, but hey, it's here. I don't know. Maybe you could come up with something for it and it would be kind of interesting. If we're talking about other uses for this, PvP, I think not having to have a resto staff and being able to put a huge heal on someone or a huge damage shield on someone could have some utility there so that we're kind of buffing our group. But again, we'd probably throw on a resto staff and then we could just run healing ward. So I'm not entirely sure. This is a good spot to use for a pull. If you need a Magicka pull, you could go with it here. That would also work really well. Stun, if you need it. Again, that's more of a PvP use. And really the only other cool thing about this skill is this Druid's Resurgence, which will give you 1,000 magic and stamina back, which can reduce the cost of this, right? So you could go with a pull, you could go with this Druid's Resurgence. Where'd it go? You go with this Druid's Resurgence, and that'll reduce the cost and give you back 1,000 stamina. So it makes the skill basically like you're trading Magicka for stamina in that case, and maybe that could have some utility for you. Mostly that's going to be for tanks. And then if you were doing this, in PvP, and you wanted to apply Breach to the target, you wanted to reduce their damage done, you wanted to defile so that their healing and damage shields are less, that would probably be the way to go, is as a chain that you can pull someone in, as well as applying a debuff all in one. But again, I think mostly PvP focused. And then another one that's going to be our last one here, kind of a utility skill, if you will, is also going to be mostly PvP focused. So Trauma, this applies a healing absorption, and right now this number isn't being reduced by our debuff. I don't know. We'll have to see how it ends up being when it goes live, but potentially you could put a healing debuff on the target. You could also potentially snare them, or there's a handful of other things causing damage, status effects, immobilizing, what have you. And then you could also defile them, right? So this is something where you could put a healing absorb on them and then also reduce their healing received to really make it easy for your allies to target someone down, perhaps someone that you just chained in. And this is an ability that has a bit of a cast time and then goes out, so you could potentially cast this on them, hit them with it, and then chain them in, kind of deal. So anyways, it's a lot of interesting stuff here. You could also set them off balance if you wanted just more pure damage for bursting them down. Some interesting skills for PvP healers, but I think that's basically it for today. A lot of options here, a lot of things you could do, and a lot to check out. So hopefully this is helpful. I think next we'll be moving on to DPS. Hopefully Skinny Cheeks doesn't beat me to it. And we'll also talk about the Endless Archive and stuff like that, because I think there's a lot of other ways to go with a lot of these different skills. But anyways, that's it for today. I appreciate everybody watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and we'll catch you in the next one.